Here we go. Another episode of The Rundown coming at ya. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. Our mission is to bring you the real news each and every week. And there's a ton of content that we release every week, mainly through our app, but we do publish everything a week later to YouTube and Rumble. Whether or not it stays up there, we can't really control because we are shadow banned, and sometimes stuff is even taken down without our permission, right? YouTube just kind of comes in there and does whatever YouTube does. So the best way is to access all of our content through our website, through our app. If you want more information about that, you can go to unitednetwork.earth. But if you become a member, you're going to get a ton of good stuff. So our news team, we talk about stories that are in the headlines, perhaps some stories you haven't heard of yet, but we go one step deeper and give you more of the why behind the stories. We also have our incredible field messengers, which are boots on the ground out there reporting on what is happening in their own communities. And we also have reports from the Global Intelligence Agency. And if you haven't heard any of those reports, then hold on to your hats because there's going to be a lot of information you've never heard before. And really what we're doing here is trying to show you what's really happening on our planet now, because you're not getting that information from mainstream media or any alternative media source unless they're stealing our content. And what most people don't realize is the importance of what is happening here and now on this planet. We are truly in this battle of good versus evil. Earth is basically the final showdown, and we've talked about why many times. And really, it's getting you guys the information so you know how to lead your lives, because we have a lot of changes coming down the pipeline. This isn't anything that we've mandated, but God's source, the creator of the universe, has said it is now time, and the other side had its chance, and they blew it. Okay. And so onward and upward. And there are so many things that we have to change about this planet so that it works in a natural, organic way that is positive and uplifting, and basically the exact opposite trajectory as we were on. We've got to do a 180 here. And we hope that our content empowers you to not only know what's going on here and now, but we also talk about how we can change things and what does need changed, because we need all of you to help with this. I mean, there is no sitting back and, watch other people fix the planet. Like, this is everybody get together and do your part. And it's going to take some time. And, some people got to wrap their head around this, because a lot of our traditional structures, including government, are starting to fall. And that is by design. That is because it is time. It is time for new structures to be put in place, ones that don't make you a slave, because we were all slaves and we really didn't know it. And so that's what we reveal to you guys. So you should listen. You should watch our content. But I always encourage you guys, don't just take what we say and believe it. You should be doing your own research. And you should be using your own discernment, which is something we're going to talk a little bit more about in the Global Intelligence Agency report. What this show is, this podcast is a week in review. So I go through our top stories that we discussed this week, just to kind of give you guys an idea, a surface level idea of what was discussed. It's great to go back and watch all those videos, but I know you guys are busy. We're all busy. Our lives are crazy. And so this is a great way to catch up. It's also a great way if you want to share UNN with other people, perhaps people that aren't members, and you just kind of want to let them know what we're talking about. You can do that through this podcast. But again, think for yourself. Ask questions. And if something resonates with you, then share it with somebody else, because we're all going to be growing and learning from one another. And this is a really important part of the whole process. Okay, as far as announcements go, we released a pretty important video this week. We released it on our app and YouTube. I believe it was published to Rumble as well. This is actually an interview that I did 3 years ago with the childhood babysitter of Elon Musk. So when Elon was a child, His family had a very specific babysitter because they picked these people, they groom them, and the babysitter, believe it or not, is still alive today. She actually has her own YouTube channel. You can look her up under Shalom Girl. But again, this was an interview I did a few years ago. It was right as I was waking up, and it was just through a series of events. I was not part of UNN at the time. I was just starting to learn how the world was really structured and the demonic forces behind everything. And I interviewed her, I edited the video, and then it never aired. That was not my choice, but it was never released, kind of put on hold. And as far as why we're releasing it now, I'm going to explain part of that a little bit later on because it kind of ties in with some of the stuff Kim's going to talk about in the GIA report. But it's important to get this information out there. And we've run some clips here and there on UNN, but never like the full thing and really put it out there. And now we have. We put it out this week, and hold on to your hats because this account is pretty incredible. And, again, use your own discernment. It sheds a very different light on Elon's family and his upbringing and why he may be doing some of the things that he's doing today. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I can tell you that. It's pretty much the opposite. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. Again, it's on our app, and I know it's on YouTube, so check it out. It's like 11 minutes long, and it'll really open your eyes. Let's go ahead and dive into the stories that we covered this week. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. So let's start with the stories from our incredible field messengers. This is what United Network News is all about. It's all about real people telling stories, giving information, sharing news of what is going on in their own communities. What would happen if we had people all over the world doing this? And we do, by the way. At last count, I think there was like over 120 people from 120 countries. Am I getting that information right? I don't have the media kit up here. But we want lots of stories from every single part of the world. And we think that's the best way to share what's really happening on this planet. You don't need someone to intercede for you, right? You don't need someone from some big network to come in and share what's going on. People with their own agendas or agendas that have been handed down to them. You don't need any of that. We can talk to each other. And in doing so, we can break down these stereotypical walls that have been built up for us that are keeping a lot of us from just connecting with one another, Forget about your skin color or your sexual preference. Just start talking to each other again. And we believe this is the best way to do that. So let's share the incredible reports from all over the world that we released this week, okay? We're going to start with Akira from Japan. And this is a follow-up story. He's done this now 3 times, so this is part 3. He gives an update on what happened in the Noto Peninsula area. So if you recall, there was an earthquake there, I believe on January 1st of 2024. And then they had these crazy heavy rains that came in and caused a lot of damage and flooding. And so this is part 3 of his report. He goes and he talks to the owner, I believe it is, of this market that's in the heart of all of this. And the reason this market is so important is because this was kind of a hub for the community, okay? When all this was going on, you got to get the market back up and running for supplies. And it wasn't just a couple of people that did this. There were 1,200 volunteers. And this is why we believe in humanity so much, because in this particular place, the government did not help at all. So this was people coming together to help other people. And when these power structures, these pillars of society that we've relied on for so long, when this starts to crumble, well, it is starting to crumble, but when these fall, it is going to be people helping people. And this is why we know this system is going to work in places like the Noto Peninsula. And according to the owner of this market, he said the water was up 2 meters in his store But it ended up reopening a couple months later. And again, that was because of the volunteers. So we actually got to hear from the market owner in his own words, obviously very emotional story of what happened and how the community came together. It's a great story. All right, Steve from Canada talks to us about egg prices, right? This has kind of crept into our regular news that the team and I have been working on because it is kind of insane, right? All over the country, all over the world, really. So Steve is in Canada. It's affecting him as well. And it's kind of interesting when you see these stories. I actually had to do the conversion because I'm like, what's a Canadian dollar compared to a US dollar? I found out, see, you learn something new every day. 1 Canadian dollar right now is the equivalent of about 70 cents, US cents. But it's, important to see, really what's going on. We've got a news story coming up. I think it's a couple weeks from now. We're working ahead, so I'm not sure when the exact release date is. But because this ties into the avian bird flu outbreak. So we break that down a little bit because the state of Pennsylvania is going through a lot right now with that. So look for that in the coming weeks. Rick out of Arizona, which is a state in the U.S., talks about some health issues he's been having and natural ways that he's been able to resolve some of these issues. So in his case, he was dealing with some prostate issues, and he talks about this amazing plant-based diet that never really worked for him before, just doing that, but he was able to make some significant improvements in his life. And there's not usually a one-size-fits-all when it comes to this, so it's important for us to hear other people's stories, and if you feel that resonates with you, maybe you can look into that and, clear up some stuff on your own. We're all about doing things as naturally as possible, but what works for Rick or myself or whatever may not work for you. But it's important to hear this. So in Rick's case, he heard about this smoothie. I think he said it was using raw hemp. And there was like an 18-day challenge, and he talks about he just had incredible benefits from this. So very interesting. Paul out of Australia talks about a fire that hit the Grampians National Park. I believe this happened in December of 2024. And then he said there was like a second round, I believe, in January. And it's this beautiful park. And he was able to get some, access to the land because they've been closing off certain areas and things are still restricted. But apparently it burned about 135,000 hectares. And he talks, he kind of questions some things because if you look, and this is why you just can't take mainstream media's word on things, because we have all these I live in Southern California. I have all these wildfires, right? And places, all over the world are burning. But if you look at the pictures, a lot of times this does not look natural. Like the heat of these flames is way beyond what a typical brush fire or wildfire could accomplish. And this was the same thing. In Paul's eyes, this is the same thing that happened to this park. So we got to see, some of the destruction. Things are not growing back in a normal way. So there's a lot of questions. We should be asking questions when this kind of thing happens. Emma out of Spain talks about healthy juicing. So I love Emma. She has a garden in her backyard, and she goes out, and it wasn't necessarily specific ingredients I think she was looking for. She's just kind of seeing what was out there. And I love that way of like making a smoothie. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to have in my smoothie today. Let's go out to the garden and see. So in this case, she was able to grab some ginger, celery, and lime. She used a whole lime. And she had this blender, and she really just cut up like different parts of all three of those items and put it in a blender. Like she didn't, take off, the top of the ginger or anything like that. And I was like, is that really going to blend? Will it blend? I don't know. Is it going to blend? And it did. And the result was like this green kind of smoothie. And she takes a shot of this. I don't know. She does it every morning, but it was just like a really cool thing that she did. And she had plenty left over. She said it was pretty impactful. Like it was, I don't know if it was spicy. Ginger can do some crazy things when you do a shot of that. But it was a very simple, easy recipe. And, this is just one thing that you can do. Everything was fresh and from her garden and beautiful, right? Cara from Australia shows us how to make summer tomato fritters. So in Australia, it is summer, in case you're wondering, in case you're on this side with me and you're like, summer, what? But she had fresh tomatoes, homegrown tomatoes, and she turned them into this great snack or, kind of maybe a light meal if you paired it with a salad or something like that. But it was really easy. So she used tomatoes from her garden, parsley, mint, dill, egg, and flour, and I believe some baking powder as well. And she mixed all that up, and then she just fried it until it was golden brown. It looked delicious. So I don't know, maybe a recipe you may want to give a try. Monica out of Romania. I feel like Monica, she's like a great tour guide for us. She takes us to all these really cool spots in Romania, one being an ice hotel. So this is high in the mountains of Romania. You really need to see the footage on this one, right? You got to watch the video. But this is a very unique experience. So this is obviously seasonal, but this hotel, it's a small hotel, is crafted entirely from ice. And she takes us through, I believe she said there's 11 rooms. I mean, there are actual beds in this, guys. How it doesn't melt. I mean, there's no fireplace, right? How this doesn't melt, just with body, heat or what, I have no idea. Not my area of expertise. There's even like a little restaurant and a bar in there. And there's also snow sports outside. So, I don't know if it's on Airbnb or something like that. This seems like a very, specialized thing. Or maybe you can just go and like get a quick tour of it, something like that. But very cool, right? Never knew there was an ice hotel. All right, Sherry out of Indiana, which is a state in the U.S., takes us on a historic hotel tour. Now, this hotel, a little bit different than the one in Romania, was originally built in 1902. It is a domed hotel, and this is in Indiana where Sherry lives, and it's considered an eighth wonder of the world. So it's one of those hotels, I don't know if you guys have ever been in one of these, where the lobby is where the dome is, and then the rooms are kind of on the outside, if you've ever, been to a place like that. But think like 10 times the size of anything you've probably ever seen. And it has definitely gone through some ups and downs. It was falling apart there for a while, so they had to close it. They eventually remodeled at least part of it. It looks beautiful from the video she showed. And there's even spring water on the property. I think they sold the bottles of spring water at one point, but for whatever reason, they're not allowed to do that anymore. And our final story from our field messengers is again from Emma out of Spain. And instead of talking to us about juicing, she's talking to us about her coffee. But it's not really fair to call this coffee. This is her morning coffee, but it is so much more than coffee. So instead of just getting one of those little Keurig things and popping it in, this is a completely different spin. This is nutrient-packed coffee with ingredients like organic cacao powder, MCT oil, also a pinch of sea salt. She mixes all this together. In fact, I think she had a couple different types of cacao powder. There's like a lighter and a darker, mixed it in, and she is set for the day with this. She loves drinking it, does amazing things for her, and now maybe can do amazing things for you too. Let's talk about some of the more in-depth news stories that the team and I worked on for you guys this week. First, we're talking about getting kids to embrace healthy eating. That is a bit of a challenge for many of us parents, right? Because there's so many processed food options just lurking around right? A creative approach, however, and basically turning this on his head can make a big difference. So involving kids in activities like growing their own food or participating in meal prep helps them develop a connection to healthy eating. So we're giving you guys some tips. Gardening, for example, boosts curiosity and pride in fresh produce. encouraging healthier choices. And then there are programs out there that are designed to help kids. You may have one in your area. For example, Food Wise Kids is a program in San Francisco, and it takes students to farmers markets to learn where food comes from, making fruits and vegetables more exciting. So here's a little bit more about that program. Again, it's called Food Wise.
Got really excited to get the experience of going into the market and buying the fruits, buying the vegetables. I mean, I think it gave them like more of a sense of responsibility.
What I love about Food Wise Kids is working with the kids and seeing how excited they get about meeting the farmers and cooking with the fruits and vegetables and tasting the food.
What do you think you would call this an elephant part?
Seeing them try something for the new time that they maybe would have not gotten to try if they hadn't come to the program.
You guys ready to go shopping?
Kids are constantly faced with marketing about high sugar products, sodas. They might not have even tried a fresh strawberry before.
Getting that real life experience of actually purchasing the items.
I think the most exciting thing that kids take away from the Food Wise Kids program is the empowerment to get to make choices about their food. So they get to walk through the market and talk to the farmers and decide, do I want a purple carrot, or do I want a yellow carrot, or do I want broccoli, or do I want strawberries? And I think that's really important when trying to get your children to eat more fresh produce.
Yep, that is the name of the game. You need to make this fun for them. And you can do that in other ways too. Maybe not going to a farmer's market. You can play games. You can create challenges. You can make food presentations more creative. And all of this sparks enthusiasm, turning healthy eating into an enjoyable family activity. Well, around the world, abandoned golf courses are being transformed into thriving natural habitats, benefiting both ecosystems and communities. As golf courses use vast amounts of land, water, and chemicals, because they treat that grass, it often harms local environments. However, conservation groups and local authorities are repurposing these spaces by restoring wetlands, reintroducing native species, and creating green spaces. A notable example is the San Geronimo Golf Course in California, you can look that up, which has been turned into a public park that supports wildlife like the endangered coho salmon. Here's a little bit more on what you can do with these golf courses.
Golf courses are often criticized for their environmental impact, but how are they evolving to become more sustainable? As awareness of environmental issues grows, many golf courses are taking significant steps toward sustainability. Initiatives such as water conservation, native landscaping, and habitat preservation are becoming standard practices. Courses are increasingly implementing eco-friendly practices, such as using recycled water for irrigation and minimizing chemical use. Understanding the environmental impact of golf and the industry's efforts to address these challenges is crucial for ensuring the sport's future and preserving natural resources.
Now, there are some challenges like funding and competing land uses, but these efforts are gaining momentum, showing how golf courses can evolve into sustainable spaces that promote biodiversity and offer places for people to connect with nature. Let's talk about tobacco, and not just smoking, but tobacco, like all around tobacco. Tobacco continues to be a major health and environmental threat, causing over 1 million deaths annually and contributing to significant pollution, believe it or not. Let's talk a little bit more about these effects that tobacco has, not on just humanity, but our environment.
The industry is also responsible for polluting land, water, and air with toxic chemicals, including arsenic, lead, and ammonia nitrates from the production process, as well as the disposal of these products after use. Tobacco plants require large amounts of water, fertilizers, and pesticides to grow, which are often manufactured or produced by companies that are based in developing countries with little or no environmental regulations. These chemicals include nicotine and various additives like ammonia, formaldehyde, and acetone, which are used during the manufacturing process. These chemicals can be found in cigarette smoke and secondhand smoke. When they get into the environment through improper disposal of cigarette butts or other waste materials, their effects can be devastating on ecosystems and wildlife. The chemicals are especially harmful to fish, because they disrupt their endocrine system, their ability to reproduce and grow, as well as their sensory organs that help them find food and avoid predators.
Despite growing awareness and regulations, including the World Health Organization's Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, tobacco consumption remains widespread, especially in low and middle-income countries. Efforts like plain packaging, smoking bans, and increased taxes have been effective in reducing consumption, but challenges are ongoing. In 2025, the U.S. FDA proposed a rule to limit nicotine levels in cigarettes, and countries like New Zealand and the U.K. are also taking some bold steps in curbing smoking. However, despite all these efforts, tobacco remains a leading cause of preventable death, and more work is needed to address its impact on public health and the environment. Noise-canceling headphones. Have you thought about those too much, or even the little earbuds? You can get them in various forms. Well, it is designed to block out distractions and improve audio quality, but there's always a but. It might be more harmful than we realize when used excessively. Audiologists warn that prolonged use of these devices could interfere with the brain's natural ability to process sound, potentially contributing to something called auditory processing disorder, or APD. It's a condition where the brain struggles to interpret sounds, even though hearing itself is unaffected.
Do you own a pair of noise-cancelling headphones? Well, for some that do, they're wearing their headphones for up to 8 hours a day, and audiologists are concerned that this could have an impact on their sound processing skills. Some suggest that by blocking out the everyday noises like car engines, the brain can struggle to then filter out what is just noise and what is a sound signal, making it harder to pick up on those alerts or someone speaking directly to you. When someone has trouble identifying speech and understanding sounds, but their hearing level is normal, it could be what's known as an auditory processing disorder. The way we engage with visuals and audio has changed since the pandemic too, partially due to new products and technology, but also increased anxiety in noisy places after the lockdown. It's now common to see people walking outside wearing their noise-cancelling headphones and watching videos online with subtitles, despite perfectly hearing the sound.
Constantly filtering out background noise can weaken the brain's ability to distinguish between different sounds, which again could hinder learning and communication, especially in young people. While noise-canceling tech protects hearing from loud sounds, it may inadvertently impair auditory processing, making moderation essential for maintaining both hearing health and brain function. Well, the concept of transforming empty office buildings into vertical farms, right, so you're growing vertically as opposed to horizontally, offers a potential solution to urban food shortages while repurposing unused spaces. With increasing office vacancies due to remote work, converting these buildings into indoor farms could provide fresh local produce with minimal new construction. Take a listen.
None other than the skyscrapers are feeding us now. Vertical farming is taking urban agriculture to new heights. What if your local produce aisle was right next door? Vertical farming makes it possible. Using stacked layers and LED lights, these indoor farms grow everything from leafy greens to strawberries year-round. And the best part? They use 90% less water and no pesticides. Urban areas no longer need vast fields or perfect weather. By growing upwards instead of outwards, we save space and reduce transportation emissions. Plus, vertical farms can be set up in unused buildings, making cities greener and more self-sufficient. So next time you bite into a juicy tomato, think vertical. The future of farming is here, and it's right in our urban backyard.
However, vertical farming faces some challenges, including high energy costs, limited crop variety, and competition from traditional farming. Despite these obstacles, vertical farming shows some promise, especially in regions with limited farmland, such as Singapore and the UAE. This innovative approach not only benefits the environment, but also supports local economies by creating jobs and reducing reliance on imported food. Red light therapy. Now we're talking, guys. This is something I do at least an hour a day, sometimes closer to 2 hours. Red light therapy, which uses low wavelength red light to stimulate cellular repair and rejuvenation, is gaining popularity for its potential benefits in improving skin health, also reducing inflammation and boosting energy. While research supports its effectiveness in areas such as pain relief, muscle recovery, and improving cognitive function, it has also shown promise in treating conditions like dry age-related macular degeneration and myopia. However, with a variety of devices available, choosing the right one depends on individual goals, such as targeting skin or joint issues.
What's the difference between red light and near-infrared light? Red light obviously is visible to the human eye, and it is bright red. Near-infrared light is invisible to the human eye, and it's kind of a faint pink. And the two main differences are they actually affect the body in very similar ways. They just affect the body on different levels. So the red light is mostly for the skin, the eyes, the hair, everything on the outside of the body. The near-infrared light actually goes deeper into the body. It penetrates through the skin, into the muscles, into the bones, into the organs, into the joints, everything on the inside of the body. They do similar things to the body, they just do them on two different levels.
Despite its generally safe use, it is important to consult with a medical professional that you trust before starting therapy, as prolonged exposure may cause irritation or discomfort. All right, sugar. We're back to talking about sugar, right? This poison that is in everything. And it seems like they're really targeting our kids with this. Sugar has become ubiquitous, even sneaking into baby food, and its widespread presence raises concerns about its long-term effects on our health. In fact, many infant formulas, especially in the U.S., are sweetened with high glycemic ingredients like sucrose and corn syrup solids, which can impact your baby's health, unlike European formulas that stick to a natural lactose.
It turned out that some infant formula milk products contain more sugar than soda, which means some families are knowingly feeding their babies massive amounts of sugar that destroys their health later on. These findings come from a global investigative study published recently in the British Dental Journal. The researchers investigated the sugar content of 212 commercially available formula milk products that are targeted at infants under 3. These formula milk products were sold in 11 different countries. The researchers examined the labels of each formula milk product and compared their content to that of breast milk. Their findings revealed that by drinking formula milk, infants are ingesting sugars that they would not have received naturally. The findings revealed that over half of the products examined contain more than 5 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. In many cases, the sugar content was over 7.5 grams per 100 milliliters. To put it in simple words, some formula milk products included in their study contained almost double the sugar of well-known drinks, such as Fanta Orange. The researchers published a long list of different formula milk products. The sugar amount in some of them was as high as 9.8 grams per 100 milliliters. That's close enough to heavy soda such as Sprite, 8.6 grams per 100 milliliters. Coca-Cola, 10.6 grams per 100 milliliters. And even energy drinks such as Red Bull, 11 grams per 100 milliliters. Of course, babies drink more than 1 bottle of formula milk a day, which means these amounts of sugar are double.
Studies show excessive sugar consumption starting in infancy can create a lifelong craving for sweets and negatively affect learning, memory, appetite control, and even brain development. Additionally, many baby food companies add sugar to make their products more appealing, often masking it with marketing tricks. You've seen those, I'm sure. Parents are encouraged to limit sugar intake and advocate for healthier options, even in settings like daycare, to protect their children's future health. Have you ever looked at something that you're about to peel, you're about to throw away and be like, can I use this for good? So many of us do this, but did you know there are a lot of incredible nutrients in the peels that we're just throwing away? For example, apple skins are rich in antioxidants, and potato peels provide fiber, potassium, vitamin C. Carrot peels support your vision, your skin health with their fiber and vitamin A. And these peels also contain polyphenols, that's a $5 word, that can reduce the risk of chronic diseases. So why aren't we eating these again?
I was recently asked why in the world I was eating the peel of an orange. There are 4 reasons. Number 1, the orange peel is loaded with nutrients that will make you feel better, look better, and have better relationships. It's got thiamine, riboflavin, folate, polyphenols. Second reason, it's loaded with fiber. Of course, fiber is always going to improve your relationships because when you poop well, you're going to feel better and you're going to be nicer to people. Number 3, this is the fruit pectin. The fruit pectin has been shown to be anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. And number 4, it tastes great. Might be an acquired taste if you're used to eating a lot of sugar, but as your taste buds adapt to real food, you're going to like the orange peel.
To make the most of these nutrients, it's best to choose organic produce to avoid those nasty pesticides or clean the peels thoroughly. Even if you're not eating them, peels can be repurposed as natural cleaners, teas, or beauty treatments. Plus, composting peels enriches the soil, benefiting your garden. So who out there is trying to learn a new language? I know my family and we are all on that app Duolingo. We're all learning Spanish, some at faster paces than others. Well, learning a new language is an exciting journey that requires patience, effort, and the right mindset. Adopting a growth mindset, right? That's a buzzword right now, which is believing that your skills can improve with practice, helps you stay motivated and overcome challenges. Research shows that learners with a growth mindset are more likely to succeed in becoming fluent, while memorizing vocabulary and grammar, well, that can be tough. Making language learning fun by incorporating activities like watching movies, singing songs, or chatting with native speakers can make the process more enjoyable.
If you would like to acquire a new language, watch out for this mistake almost everyone makes. The worst thing you could do when learning a new language is to approach it with what we call a school mindset. Most learners believe they can learn a language the same way they did with other subjects at school, but languages aren't just a series of facts to be memorized. And to speak a language fluently, we must immerse in it and make connections. Think of babies. Before they are enrolled in school, they learn things about the world through experience. If you tell a baby it's time for breakfast before you feed them, a baby will eventually learn that breakfast means they are going to eat. Instead of trying to learn a language the traditional way through conscious memorization, focus on learning through play. Find content you enjoy in your target language and consume it daily. Before you even know it, you'll be able to produce the language effortlessly. Applying the school mindset to language acquisition is well-intentioned but highly counterproductive.
Ultimately, learning a new language boosts brain power, improves decision-making, and enhances personal and professional relationships. Now, here are some highlights from the Global Intelligence Agency reports, the GIA reports. And we usually have 3 updates each week. Kim puts this out, Kimberly Gogan. She is the head of the GIA. If you have not heard of the GIA before, this is one of those things you're probably not going to find a lot of information online about because only the people at the tippy top of this power structure that is being dismantled even knew that it existed. And this is the agency that all the other agencies would report to. And a while back, this agency basically went rogue, okay? Because you could say that it was a bad agency a while ago because the agencies below it are doing bad things. So whoever is controlling that must, not be out for the betterment of humanity. And that was the case for a period of time. But it went rogue, I think maybe a decade or so ago, went rogue. And now this agency with Kim at the helm is helping to restore this planet. And most of the times that means taking down the people or beings standing in the way of making this happen. Okay. And Kim comes on and gives us these updates. So this week, we didn't have an update on Wednesday. We had a message go out on Telegram that I'll read to you guys, but Kim did 2 full reports, one on Monday and one on Friday. So if you want to go back and watch those, look for those dates. Let's start with Monday. Let's talk about our friend, not so much of a friend, Elon Musk. He did, I think it was 2 interviews with Ted Cruz on Ted Cruz's podcast. I watched both of them this week because I'd seen some clips, but I was like, I actually couldn't get through the second one because all it was Ted Cruz kissing Elon Musk's you-know-what the whole time, saying about how incredible he is and he's brilliant and he does all this incredible stuff, which made me lose all respect for Ted Cruz, because being that high up in American politics, you should know that there is definitely a system and it's not a good one, okay? And people are usually out for power or money, but claiming that Elon does all this stuff that he's credited with is just a lie. And I would think someone of Ted Cruz's level, okay, which isn't super high, but still better than the average Joe, wouldn't get on a podcast and just rave about this guy unless, they're on the same team, right? That's the only thing that makes sense. They're on the same team, pushing out the same crap agenda. Sorry, but that's what it is. It's just nonsense. But this week, there was a two-part interview. I think one was released the week prior and then another one this week. And Elon, in the first interview, talks about magic money computers. And you can find the soundbite online. I'm not going to play it here, okay? But essentially, he says these are computers set up at various stations. Yes, in the White House. Yes, the NSA, Pentagon, Department of Defense, all these different places. And they basically just spit out free money. And money that really isn't tied to anything. So it's unlimited. Hello, inflation. This is just so bizarre, right? This is the world that we live in now. And he's talking about this, and you're just like, where is this coming from? Now, he's talking about it in the sense that he's with Doge, and this is one of the crazy things that he discovered. But that is not the point of this whole interview and releasing of this information. They are usually pretty intentional with the crap that they put out there, okay? And they want you to believe certain things. That's the focus of mainstream media, is to guide people to believe whatever they want them to believe. And so what these machines are, and this is what Kim talks about initially in the first part of Monday's GIA report. She talks about how this was really a message to the debtors that the Trump team has, because they have promised a ton of money to lots of different people. And they promised this way before Trump got into office. They said, oh, yeah, go with us and we're going to give you all this money. And, for all these evil, Dr. Evil programs they want to do that hurts humanity. Well, they have not paid up. And there are a lot of people that are starting to not believe them. So these operatives are having a really hard time keeping up with all of their lies. And so they had Elon get out there and talk about magic money computers that can make these unlimited payments. And then afterward, behind the scenes, what you didn't see is everyone's like, oh, then pay us. You've got these magic money machines. It's like, magic money? Where do they come up with this stuff? It has to come from somewhere. And we have broken down the financial system a million times, right? And there's lots of videos that we've released out there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about cryptocurrency in just a bit, because this is tied to this. Apparently this magic money was some sort of fantasy cryptocurrency, but it wasn't tied to anything. So it was like completely made up, just baloney. Okay. So anyway, if you're wondering what in the world that is, okay, that is Elon Musk talking through a podcast to talk to all these debtors to say, we have a magic money machine and we'll just give you money. And no money has come out of those magic money machines. That's crazy. I don't know what happened there. Okay. I want to play a soundbite for you guys because, the deep state always thinks that there is a big day coming up when they are going to regain control of the financial system. And some of this does connect with spiritual things, covenants. There's an actual reason why they believe certain things are going to happen. And this week, they thought, something big was going to happen. Essentially, they thought we were going to have Judgment Day or some version of Judgment Day. And on Judgment Day, there would be a payout of debts that would be run by some sort of AI, so a computer system. And here's the thing, though. This system hasn't turned on for thousands of years. But apparently this is going to be the year that this happens. And they're going to have Judgment Day. And this is also in connection with what they call New Year's. So it's obviously not New Year's to us. That's in January. But they follow a lunar calendar. So their new year, which is a time where they could get money to do all of their bad things that they want to do to humanity. So that would be in connection with the lunar calendar, which focuses on the first. So New Year's in a lunar calendar is the first full moon that occurs during the equinox. So now we are coming up here on the spring equinox as I'm recording this. I believe we're into it right now. So they thought big things were going to happen. I'm going to play a soundbite from Kim explaining what was going on here.
It is New Year's. So for those people, and we know who you are, and that's probably not you, they mark the New Year's Day in accordance with the lunar calendar, which is the full moon that occurs within what we call equinox time every year. So we have been in equinox time for a while. We are only a few days away from the actual equinox. I think it's 3 days away from now. So the full moon, the end of last week, marked the new year for these people. Now, this one, due to the moment of silence in the heavens, so to speak, that occurred prior to that, they believed that they were on track for a very large change. And let's just say in our world, that would be more like Judgment Day. It would be a time of paying of debts, especially on the Saturday or the Ides of March, the 15th of March that would follow, which was definitely an interesting day, to say the least. And this would have been a time when a computer system called ARC would have turned on, and yet it did. Now, ARC was an omniversal or multi-universal system. It was run by what you would call both angels and demons, and it had a lot to do with judgment, debt calling in. And so it did. It began doing that. It also created a simulation, a matrix, which didn't last very long. It lasted for about 24 hours, not even 24 hours, in which it would start to run simulations not only on Earth, but everywhere. Allegedly, this is a time when people pay for their sins, so to speak, and are also rewarded for their virtues. The system hadn't been turned on or hadn't lit up, I guess you would say, in thousands of years, if not more than thousands of years. And it is tied directly to the Arcs of the Covenant, ARC. That's why it's called ARC AI. ARC is a covenant between source, anti-source, and what you would call neutral source, in which, let's just say, it was meant to keep the universe on track, and if need be, it was supposed to fire up this simulation to bring everything on track and everything back in balance. Did the deep state know what they were looking for? No. But that didn't stop them from acquiring over the last decade or so all 7 arcs and moving them over to the Kolyma Gulag in Russia, because they thought that they could, all by themselves, renew this covenant. Well, it was never between anyone here on Earth, and it really had nothing to do with them, and I'm not sure who they were trying to reach out to, but nonetheless, no, it didn't work. I do know a person that was involved in this, let's just call it, giant mess, and that I talked to that person quite a bit, actually, probably from the years of 2013 to 2017. Met that person in person in a couple of different countries. And not, let's just say, someone that went off the rails in a lot of ways. But this person is the one that took some information that I had given to him a long time ago and orchestrated this entire fiasco that's been going on for a little over a week now. Come to find out, that didn't surface until over the weekend as well. So the covenant has officially expired, and there is no need to have a simulated judgment, so to speak. And, well, that's another thing that went off the rails. Were they expecting to get access to some kind of an AI because of an event they were expecting over the weekend? Yes. Did that happen? No.
Another thing that you may be seeing in the headlines here is the Trump administration putting out bids and contracts to try to recruit people who build cryptocurrency platforms. See, if you don't have money, if your financial system has been taken over, in this case, by the good guys, all right? And you're not the good guys, you're the bad guys, because they are. If you don't have control over an existing financial system, you try to create a new one, right? First of all, you try to hack and get access to the one that you lost. They've been doing that and they continue to do that with ours. Not going to happen. They can't compete with the platform, the new platform, okay? So plan B is to create a new currency. And they have been trying to do this with various digital currencies, and a lot of promises has gone out, and there's been Trump bucks and a bunch of crap that has not worked on the backside and will never work. So now their brilliant idea is to try to build a cryptocurrency platform from scratch using one of these guys. And Kim says I think they selected one that they thought was, at least the person that built the cryptocurrency platform said it was super secure. No one's going to break into this. And it took the NSA 6 hours to break into it. It's obviously not going to work. You can't run United States currency, dollars, much less the whole world. And, they want this for complete control. And ideally, there would be one currency that they could control, but they do not have the computing power to do that. That is a quantum type of computer. It's even higher. Like this, when they say quantum, the crap that they're using, sorry, I'm using that word a lot today, but that's kind of how I feel about the deep state. Everything they do is crap. So, these computer programs they claim are quantum are like BB quantum, hasn't even been born quantum. It's so baby. It hasn't even been born yet. Okay. That's why they can't compete with what God has created. Okay. They never will. They'll never be able to hack our new financial system that basically only you guys know about. The rest of the world has yet to discover because they don't have access to that. And Kim uses a whiteboard to explain why they'll never be able to do this. So this is much easier to see on a whiteboard, but I picked a portion of what Kim talked about that I thought you might understand even without a whiteboard. But I'm going to give you just a sliver of the conversation. Again, if you want a full breakdown on why any of their external cryptocurrency platforms that they're trying to create will not work, I suggest you go back and listen to Monday's report. It's more towards the second half, okay? But I'm going to play for you just a small clip just to kind of whet your appetite of the structure, because it's all about the base platform. So we have the base platform. And if we tell them, or through the system says, hey, you can't build cryptocurrency, which, as a reminder, crypt is dead. So what's cryptocurrency? Dead currency. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have anything to do with anything dead, including currency that's dead. But this really isn't something we have to worry about because, again, the base platform that they're trying to build this on will not allow it. So let me have Kim explain how this works.
So the Trump administration is continuing to put out bids, so to speak, or contracts being offered to people who build cryptocurrency platforms. Now, there was a particular bid that was won quite a long time ago, a few months ago, to a company that could build a data center that they claimed could handle enough transactions to support the entire banking system of the world. They have told them that it would take about $8 billion to build. They've also been told, the Trump administration has been told, that it would take somewhere between 5 to 10 years to build it. Well, obviously they don't have 5 to 10 years, they have 4. And that was not fast enough. So they've been reaching out to various people that are capable, at least in their mind, of building a secure cryptocurrency platform so that they could switch from the US dollar over to some kind of weirdo cryptocurrency, I mean, really fast. Because, things are getting hot out there. They owe a lot of really bad people a lot of money, and they don't have the capability to pay. So one such crypto platform builder believed he had a very secure system. It took the NSA approximately, I don't know, from my calculations, less than 6 minutes to burn the whole thing to the ground, hack the system, and off it went. Now, I know people have said that the NSA doesn't have that kind of power. And for the most part, when it comes to our system or the banking system, no, they don't have that kind of power. However, when it comes to people building systems with open source coding or using base coding, then yeah, they've got full access. And I'm going to pull out my whiteboard here and just kind of give it to you in brief and show you a little bit how they do it. It's not hard to do. So in the world, we have discussed many, many times that the world is built on 9 main webs. Whoop, there we go. So it's built on 9 webs. Many of you have heard of the deep web, the dark web, and then there is the surface web or internet that you use every day. This is where you would search the World Wide Web. This is where your bank accounts lie, that kind of thing. And this is where they tried to install that ridiculous Bank of Ireland server over the weekend. Then you have things like the Tor level and Onion servers and all that kind of stuff. And so, onward and down to 3, 4 and 5. 4 would be where your Microsoft lives. The base coding, and not really base, but part of what they see as base. But this is where, all of these new Apple softwares live, all that kind of thing. When they come out, if we came out with the UNN system, for example, and we were part of their ridiculous network, we would build it, on a level 4. 5 was predominantly military. 3 is back office of banks. Who else would live in 3? Back office of banks, probably some back-end internet stuff. You would probably also see the Treasury here and those type of people. 6, which is where your Federal Reserve would live. There are a few other government-type organizations and reserve banks that would live there as well. And it's not just banking system. This is telecommunications and that type of thing as well. 7 would have been predominantly family members. And by family members, I'm talking about the Order of the Black Sun and the Order of the Dragon family members. In this particular case, this would kind of be off limits pretty much to anyone. Some degree, you could say the NSA maybe had a little bit of access here. Now, when you start getting to 8 and 9, you know, there are some very carefully calculated algorithms that are here. By the time you get to 9, you're not in binary land anymore. You're not in a language that these people would understand. There's no open source software that exists in the human computing language that speaks this language. It is something completely and totally different. This is where you would find your control and command systems for things like Alpha and Omega in the past, and Kronos might live in here. You would also be seeing instructions and all kinds of things that were actually the base coding for our worldwide computer systems. You would now find here the Golden Age AI. You would also find in here things like the base platform for the Key Integrated Master System, which I also built over the course of the last couple of weeks. So the Key Integrated Master System does also not speak binary language. It doesn't speak any other language a computer programmer would be familiar with. Matter of fact, even the Secret Space program doesn't speak this language. It's written in something completely different. That language is then translated on down the road to meet people like you, you know, to be able to create a new base root language other than binary, which is overlays all of these levels. So there is an overlay. So you can't reprogram the binary coding, base coding in any of these systems. Even if you get access to Web 1, you can't reprogram my programming language. Now, we have effectively over the last 3 days taken over what you call open source coding. Open source coding, there are many places where you can find it on the internet. It's free a lot of the time, not always, but coders these days in the world of computing, including the NSA, builds systems based on, let's just call it cookie cutters. So I'm going to kind of explain this in baking terms. You know, I don't know if you like to cook. I love to cook when I have time, which is rarely these days. But in baking terms, you can bake a cake from scratch. And if you are the only one that has your special cake recipe, then, you know, no one else gets it, right? They can try, but if you can't read that language because it's written in a language that is not from, let's just say it's not spoken on Earth and it's not a computer language that comes from here. So therefore, you will be unable to decipher this language. Therefore, you won't know the base root for this cake recipe. So maybe you can only see part of the recipe. You can see that it has vanilla, has chocolate, has, you know, whatever flavor it is that you're putting into it. And maybe you might know a little bit about the frosting. You know, maybe you know a little bit about whatever you're putting in the cake on that level. But you don't know what kind of flour is being used, the base root of the cake recipe. So you don't know what flour is being used. You don't know what the sugar is, how much. You don't know the baking soda because you can't read the language and you don't know what it is. And that's pretty much what builds a cake. So most of the people in the world, including your Microsofts and your military people and the NSA and everybody else, they build computer systems on a different kind of coding that is not available to all of you building on open source coding. So the NSA is the one that attached to an already built system that was built in Omega on this level here, which is the base where the base root platform existed for blockchain, as an example. Everybody says, oh, it's peer-to-peer, it's so safe, it's so secure, all that kind of thing. But no, they didn't actually create it. However, the NSA pops in here and usually on to here. You know, these are their playgrounds here. And they had information passed down to them on this level that they could understand. It's a bunch of ones and zeros. It's coding language that they are familiar with. Because it was allowed on the base platform of the world system, then the NSA now has access to the base root coding for all blockchain worldwide. Therefore, if you want to build a blockchain platform, you are building it on an NSA base root system, which at the time was permitted by Sequestro. If the base root system does not allow for a blockchain system to be built within its major internet networks worldwide, then you just have a peer-to-peer network that has no hope of processing a significant amount of transactions.
Sorry, NSA, not going to work. You know, you also can't do this in 3 years. Even if you could build the platform, you can't do it in that amount of time. Okay, so that was Monday's report. Kim was super busy on Wednesday, so we released this on Telegram. I'll go ahead and read it to you, and then we'll move on with Friday's report. It's the night before the spring equinox, and the deep state is in full swing. During this time, there have been many attempts based on our last report for the deep state to get through the binary coding to the language level with no success. Binary language was the last step to human-computer networks, and you could call this the translator between human coding programs such as JavaScript, Fortran, and others. This translator language was changed today. However, there is still work to be done before the system will be completely clear. Currently, we are working on some timing and correction of the current C of sequencing. I will see you all on Friday for a full update. Happy spring equinox. See you all then. Okay, so that was from Kim on Wednesday in lieu of the Wednesday report. Then on Friday, all right, she started out by talking about Doge because there are some articles out there about stimulus checks, which is very, very misleading. I mean, this is intentional on their part, but people are paying taxes now, right? And so it's misleading for this to come out now because they're talking about stimulus checks. And I was like, how in the world are they going to send out? Let's just say that that's a real thing, which it's probably not. But how are they going to send out these checks if they're still reviewing all of the money that the government has misspent? You know, if they're still trying to save $1 trillion or whatever Elon says. And then I looked at some articles and I realized none of this is going to happen. If it does happen, they're projecting summer of 2026. So that is so misleading for the average person that right now is living paycheck to paycheck. But beyond that, okay, so this is money coming from your taxes, which, believe it or not, most of government spending has nothing to do with your taxes, okay? That's a whole separate conversation. We've discussed that in the past. But these quote-unquote stimulus checks would be money coming from your taxes. However, there are some very steep qualifications, and like I just explained, no one would even see this until summer of 2026. I would be shocked if governments exist by that time. So this is a game of popularity. You put something in the headlines, and you hope it makes you popular, even though there are a million reasons why this will probably never happen. Okay, so if you've heard about those checks, we just wanted to put it out there. That is extremely misleading. If any money goes out, it will be for a very select group of people, and it's probably not going to happen. I don't know how the government's going to survive another year. So that's pie in the sky. Kim also talks about the war in heaven. Now, remember, heaven, okay, when you get outside of 3D, time is very, very different and sometimes non-existent, okay? It's really here in the third dimension that we have to deal with time. But Kim has talked about the war in heaven before, so this is when the angels fell, and it's explained in biblical texts and other religious texts a little bit different than how it actually happened, okay? But we're not going to have time for me to play a soundbite. But if you really want to know more about the war in heaven and how the angels fell, because there was essentially a third group of, you still call them fallen angels, but angels that really hadn't picked a side yet. Okay, so you had people that were 100% with Lucifer, and you had people that were 100% for God or source. Okay, and then you had a huge portion of angels that are called fallen, at least in the Bible, it's called fallen. They're called fallen. And it says they were destined to roam the earth. But technically, these are angels that kind of played both sides. They really didn't pick a side. And this is important right now, because if you're going to go with the bad guys, you're going to be sent back to source, okay, to God, which means spiritual death, right? Maybe not completely, you could come back as something else, but you got to go deal with the big guy or girl or whatever, big energy, okay? You got to go deal with God. So if you want to learn more about that, she explains it in depth. That was a big portion of Friday's GIA report. Too much for me to include a soundbite. But I am going to include one more soundbite, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the deep state and their role on this earth, which ties into the war in heaven. And have you ever wondered, what is it that they're really trying to do? And how is this tied to the financial system? Yeah, they want money, they want power, but there has to be something spiritually behind all of this that's really anchoring all of their efforts. And there is. Here's Kim with more.
So a lot of the deep state members obviously chose the Luciferian side. I'm not going to say all. I'm going to say all. All of the deep state members chose that side. They've been fighting for that side and fighting for human soul control for a long time. Their ability to control your soul has been the base root of their existence. If it wasn't for the fact that they were not humans, they don't get on TV and in the media, and they make songs with bad frequencies and all the things that they do to us, no one would care in the real war that they existed. Nobody. They feel that since there is no Lucifer, they and their little group of folks would surely like to be the rulers of the universe and take over the fight for their side. And this has been going on for a while now, and they've kind of haphazardly worked their way through it, trying to go against the grain of everything in the universe. And they used to have more power than they do, based on the fact that they had some dominion left over from Lucifer. And these are things that Lucifer took dominion over. There's a lot of talk like, oh, God turned dominion over to Lucifer. Really, that wasn't the case. It had to do with the fight and the war and playing fair and the game and the dark age and a lot of factors in the universe that came to pass. So the reason why the financial system was Marduk's greatest invention at the time, when it worked in their favor, was because the entire base root of the financial system was to indebt you, was to give you cursed money or give you debt instruments in exchange for tremendous amounts of energy that you would generate. They say that money is evil. And at the time, it was very, very true. Money definitely by implied consent was, they say it's the root of all evil. And I don't disagree in some cases. Like I said, we all have to do it. If we live in a city, we're not in the forest eating nuts and berries to survive with our family. We are participating in the financial system in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't mean that because you participate in the financial system that you are doomed and your soul is sold to Lucifer. That doesn't necessarily mean that is the case. But there are people that take money to a whole new level. And it's okay to earn money, and it's okay to spend money, and it's okay to even have a little bit of debt. So if you have a car loan or credit cards, that type of thing, that's not what we're talking about here. But there are people that take money to a whole new level. And I mean a whole new level. They will do anything to get it. They will step on anybody to get it. They will do evil deeds to get it. They will join crazy deep state clubs to get it. They will fight to be that person, that man, that woman, to who everybody looks up to because they have this money, this house, this car. There is a reason why money is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Believe it or not, it is. Because it makes humans do crazy things sometimes. And I'm not saying that a good day's pay for a good day's work, or if you own your own business, I don't necessarily mean a wage. I mean a good day's work, honest work, deserves an honest day's return, so to speak. Now, we've been working really hard to remove all of the curses and for Source to take over dominion over everything, including the financial system. We are converting over to a currency system. The base root is gold for a reason. It has nothing to do with black gold or deep state's way of siphoning energy off of people. In that way, when money begins to flow and we don't feel a sense of lack as human beings, brought upon by our fear of not having things or our need or want to have things that we do not currently have. In some cases, people will do crazy things for even food to feed your families and your children. And, it's all about intent. And that doesn't quite count. But the financial system is a really big factor. The second most important factor, which we've talked about recently, is media, social media. Influencing you into doing things, especially as our let's just say our younger generations these days, follow a lot of what's trending. And there are a lot of pretty bad things being sold by influencers on the internet, including illegal drugs and other things that they're talking about. So let's talk about the souls. Now, clearly, in the past, there have been a lot of decisions made for us as human beings that we did not technically consent to. Some of it was from past lives. Some of it was things that we have done knowingly or unknowingly. Some of it has been full-on buy-in, into the deep states programs. Some of it just happens to be, maybe from time to time we got a little greedy, or we did some things that we possibly shouldn't have done. But when you cross the line. If it's you personally and the decision is up to you, which it has been for some time now, when you've crossed the line. And of course, there's always Source there to forgive you for things that you've done, and therefore redemption exists now. It didn't exist for a long time for humans without an intercessor, which is the reason why they create religions on this planet, because you can go directly to Source and ask for anything you want. Going directly to a person on any kind of a day, a holiday, or otherwise, and asking for forgiveness from those people, well, you don't need to. Who are they and who do they work for? Think about that for a second, and who you're asking for redemption from. I'm not saying that gathering with a bunch of friends and family on a Sunday and going to a building and having barbecues and raising money and taking care of people and helping the homeless or feeding people that can't otherwise feed themselves or providing families with a leg up when they need it. That is what community is all about. And if that is the place that you choose to do that, then I think that's wonderful. And hopefully, whatever building you walk into, whenever you choose to do that, is directly related to source. It's, you're going there for source. You're showing up for God, for source, however you want to say that. It's the intention behind it and where you're reaching out to that matters. Okay, so at one point in time, unfortunately, we were at a place by implied consent or I would almost borderline say in the gray of actual consent. We were up to about, probably in the anywhere between 50% to 70% souls that were quote unquote sold to Lucifer. A lot of you have heard about SESQV and, the Vatican holding all your souls and that type of thing. And that's not entirely true. They were intercessors, like I always call them, slave masters as human beings who were managing things and making sure that you were selling that in one way or another by creating all kinds of programs and intercessors and incredible media campaigns that make you strive for things that are crazy and outlandish and beyond your means and that type of thing. So at one point in time, that's kind of where they were at. Was that enough? Because on any given day, it changes. I mean, it could go from 72% to 50% on their side of it at the drop of a hat. So it's not like just because maybe one day you're on that level, and there's a temporary quote unquote ownership event that happened, you can always redeem yourself. See, that unlike these fallen angels or fallen folks, as we call them, was definitely not the case. The rules were different there. So where are we at now? I mean, it's kind of important to know. Most days we are, I would say probably less than 20%. You still have all your deep state people. You have your people that are excited about what they do. They love going to these little coven meetings and trying to weave black magic and, want power and control, and they're willing to kill people to get it. You know those people. We all know those people. We see them on TV every day. So pretty much to get into that kind of a power position within the world, you pretty much are gone. I mean, at that point, which is why, even for myself, I could care less. I don't even care about credit. I don't care about power. I don't care about really anything as it relates to that. What I care about is restoration, and that is the only reason why we're changing currency so that we can actually do that on behalf of Source. There's a lot of things that need to be redeemed, and it's not just human souls. That being said, over the last few days, they were expecting to create all kinds of events that would get people to buy in. So by a buy-in on their side, it's not necessarily that you did an evil thing or you did bad things or you think, I did this, at one point in time. I stole something at one point as a kid or something. That's not it. You see, buy-ins come in many different forms. And when they put a savior in front of you, doesn't matter who that savior is, or hero in front of you, and you are following that hero and you're giving all your power away to that hero, that is also a buy-in to the deep state. It's the reason why they put out programs like Nasara Jasara, Universal Income, and the RV and the redemption and, the Great Reset and all the other things you hear them talk about is because it's buy-in. But you see, if you're not buying into their savior program, there's not enough people doing that. There hasn't been enough people doing that. Like I said, even at the height, maybe they hit 70%. And a lot of that's because, well, you're buying into their media campaigns, whether that's a politician or that's a savior or a religious figure that's a savior or any one of their beings that is coming out and telling you they're the savior. And that's usually done by media campaigns. It could also be their panels of experts. Oh, look at Elon Musk. He's now taken over for Stephen Hawkins as one of the world's experts in the science realm. These are also people that have portrayed themselves under the savior program. So you just have to be pretty careful when it comes to who we follow. But you can kind of tell when there's a trend. If everybody is saying the same thing, one of two things is happening. Either they're listening to other people's report and doing a summation of those reports or surmising those reports for you, or they're pretty much all on the payroll. That's one way to tell. You also have people that portray they're giving you messages from alleged positive beings. And there are a lot of beings out there that I know that are fairly negative, even walking on this planet right now, that are extremely negative. But they come and tell you they're the good guys. So just be careful who you're talking to, listening to, channeling, and make sure you use your inner discernment. Don't ask me, ask yourself. Because you'll know the difference. It'll feel different to you. And if it ever starts to feel different at any point in time, that's when you kind of got to make your own decisions. So right now, as of this moment in time, the collective securities and other things that they used to be able to utilize to leverage for financial purposes against souls that were sold to Lucifer to issue cursed money, that was a lot of information, you might have to replay that again, are not there. They have been trying desperately to get those back. They have tried to renew a couple of different covenants, one we told you about in the Kolyma region. The other one they've been trying to renew for the last 24 hours was a covenant for themselves with Lucifer. So we talked about the fact that there are the fallen ones that didn't make a decision to go with either side, but eventually over time they would lean towards this side or lean towards that side, whether it's good versus evil. Some of them would become evil and terribly evil, and some of them would be absolute saintly, wonderful beings, so to speak. So as far as they are concerned, the ones that are absolutely 100% firmly in Lucifer's corner are super excited he's gone. Now it is time for them to be the kings, and it's time for them to take over. So they're trying to renew covenants that Lucifer had with Source. Or anti-source, so to speak. And they've been doing this for days now. They have been hunting down old space junk, old bindings that were the fallen ones, so to speak, were bound to Earth because they would like to take over the reins for everyone at this moment in time. That's not going over really well, I can tell you that right now. But they would like to do that. They would definitely like to take control over everyone. On their end, they feel that there is a loophole, at least as it relates to dominion of Earth, if they can gain control over 80% of the human souls walking this planet right now. If they could get 80% of humans to buy what they're selling by Great Reset default, meaning they chip everybody and they force everybody into their social crediting programs and all of those types of things, and, you know, become even more oppressive than they have been in the past, they consider that a win, you know, and that's why they're pushing so hard for these programs. This is the base root behind it. A lot of them are being taken out. So, you know, we have the right to do these things because there is no dominion, there is no order, there is no covenant, there is no right for them to be doing what they're doing here anymore. So for that reason, they have all been informed that they need to comply with what is happening or disappear. And we have been disappearing them left and right. At one point in time, they were about even, you know, on this planet. Like I said, that now, as far as numbers are concerned, you know, we definitely have the majority. They have the minority left here. And the minority is going to depart this planet very quickly if they don't comply with what is happening.
Yeah. So got to pick a side, guys. Personally, I think it's a real easy choice. I can't even imagine that there are beings out there that think that it's a good idea to side with Lucifer. But hey, I guess we're all wired a little bit differently. All right, that wraps up this episode of The Rundown. I appreciate you guys listening today. Again, with anything that we talk about, if something isn't resonating with you, if it just doesn't make sense to you, just put that piece of information to the side. You can always do more research. What I have found happens is, you know, I'll be listening along, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then there'll be something and I'll be like, I don't quite get that, or that doesn't quite line up with my current belief system. Just put it aside. You know, we have this saying in the US, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? It's a horrible saying. We really need a new one. But, you know, keep moving forward. Keep learning, keep being open to these kinds of conversations, because humanity has been lied to about pretty much everything, and we have to start from scratch. And in order to do this, we have to have open minds. So I encourage you guys to do that. If you want more information about us, United Network, who we are, what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. If you decide to become a member, that gives you instant access to all of the content that we put out each week. But remember, we also do publish our videos on YouTube and Rumble. If they stay up there, that's great. We don't have a lot of control over that. All right, guys, appreciate all of you. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.